everyone and welcome to another lesson. This time, we are going to explore Mapeh Grade 8 Arts first quarter lesson, and the topic is all about Southeast Asian arts. Let's go ahead and start with our discussion. This lesson will be divided into 3 parts. The lesson 1 will be all about fabric and fabric design. Lesson 2 will be all about arts and crafts. And lesson 3 will be all about sculpture of the different Southeast Asian countries. In this module, you will learn the following about the folk arts of Southeast Asia: Thailand, Cambodia, Laos, Vietnam, Indonesia, Malaysia, Singapore, and Brunei. How the context of their fascinating artworks influence the historical and cultural phenomena in the world of art. How the distinct characteristics of their artworks are reflected in the wide array of exquisite textiles, crafts, architecture, ceramics, wood carving, and leatherwork. Let's start with lesson 1, which is fabric and fabric design. Fabric design of Thailand includes Thai silk. This is produced from the cocoons of Thai silkworms. It is mainly produced in Korat, which is the center of the silk industry in Thailand. Thai weavers from this region raise the caterpillars on a steady diet of mulberry leaves. Today, Thai silk making is considered to be one of the finest arts in the world, a product of a unique manufacturing process and bearing unique patterns and colors. This is how the Thai silk weaving is made. Another one is from Cambodia. Silk weaving in Cambodia dates to as early as the 1st century since textiles were used for trading. Modern textiles have traces of motifs imitating clothing details on ancient stone sculptures. We have different types of Cambodian weaving. The first one is called ikat technique. In Khmer term, it is called chongkiet. To create patterns, weavers tie and dye portions of weft yarn before weaving begins. Patterns are diverse and vary by region. Common motifs include lattice, stars, and spots. Another technique is called uneven twill. It yields single or two-color fabrics which are produced by weaving 3 threads so that the color of one thread dominates on one side of the fabric, while the 2 others determine the color on the reverse side. Traditionally, Cambodian textiles have employed natural dyes coming from insect nests, which is a red dye, indigo, a blue dye, pro-hut bark, yellow and green dye, and lastly, an ebony bark which produces black dye. Cambodia's modern silk weaving centers are Takeo, Battambang, Vientiane Manche, Siem Reap, and Kampot provinces. Silk weaving has been revived in the past 10 years and now provides employment for many rural women. Cambodian silk is generally sold domestically, where it is used in sampot, or wrap skirts, furnishings, and pidan, or pictorial tapestries. Now, it has seen an increase in export viability. Here are some example pictures of Cambodian silk weaving. The first one is the sampot or the wrap skirts, and the second one is an example of pidan, which is a pictorial tapestry. Cambodian cotton textiles have also played a significant role in Cambodian culture. Though today, Cambodia imports most of its cotton, traditionally, woven cotton remains popular. Rural women often weave homemade cotton fabric which is used in garments and for household purposes. We have an example here of a Cambodian cotton textile called krama. This is the traditional checked scarves worn almost universally by Cambodians and are made out of cotton. Let's now go to Laos. Let's have Laos fabric weaving. According to Lao tradition, stories of their history were not passed on orally, nor was it written. They were woven. Strand by strand, Lao stories were weaved in the intricate dense patterns and motifs of textiles. Unfortunately, some are elaborately fantastic, and the motifs so cryptic that in many cases, only the weaver can accurately interpret the story. Laos fabric weaving examples is scene. This is the most diverse of the stories that are once woven into a scene. The Lao women's ankle-long skirt, whose form is undeniable but whose patterns are unique to each skirt. Though the skirt looks simple and elegant, it is traditional that every woman in Laos weaves all the scenes she would wear throughout her lifetime. She uses folk icons to express personal views. This is often accomplished by symbolist totems from the inanimate or animate world. Crabs for resourcefulness, snakes for fertility, butterflies for beauty, birds for success, and so on. Here are some Laos women wearing sin. Let's now go to the fabric design of Vietnam. We have Vietnam's golden thread silk. Golden thread silks were born in Vietnam, and many of our Vietnamese fabrics originated from Ha Dong, the center of weaving and sericulture, which is the silkworm production for centuries. Old jacquard looms are used, weaving patterns containing centuries-old symbols and characters. Some popular Vietnamese fabric ranges are Shantung Taffeta, Bengalin weave, and last one is the ebony satin, which is an all-natural lustrous silk hand-woven in southern Vietnam and naturally dyed using ebony fruit pods. The fabric dates back over a century but was only recently revitalized by the designer Vo Viet Chung. This is an example of a Shantung Taffeta fabric. This one is an example of a Bengalin weave. Lastly, this is an example of an ebony satin. Let's now move on to the fabric design of 3 Southeast Asian countries, namely Indonesia, Malaysia, and Singapore. The fabric most common to these countries is the batik. The term batik is an Indonesian Malay word believed to be related to the Malay word titik, which means point, dot, or drop. The drop action refers to the process of dyeing the fabric by making use of a resist technique, covering areas of cloth with a dye-resistant substance, usually hot wax, to prevent them from absorbing colors. This technique has been taught for over 1,000 years. Here are some categories of batik design. The first one is geometric motifs, and the second one is free-form designs. Modern batik designs depend on the creativity of their designers. Naturalistic motifs like leaves, flowers, and birds have been utilized to create elaborate and intricate designs. Modern designs also include more colors, courtesy of chemical dyes, as artists are not bound by the strict guidelines of traditional practices when craftsmen were dependent on natural dyes. In Malaysia, the states of Kelantan and Terengganu are considered the cradle where batik first flourished, reaching even Singapore's shores. There are 2 main types of batik that are produced there. First is hand-painted. The artist uses the canting, a small copper container with 1 or more different sized pipes. The second one is block printed. This is done by welding together strips of metal to form a metal block, and the metal block is then dipped into molten wax and pressed against the fabric in order to make a pattern. Leaves and flowers in Malaysian batiks are incorporated to avoid the interpretation of human and animal images as idolatry, in accordance with local Islamic doctrine. This makes their batik look similar to that of Indonesia. However, the Malaysian batik is famous for its geometrical designs or spirals. The method of Malaysian batik making is also different from those of Indonesian Javanese batik. Their patterns are larger and simpler. More brush painting is applied to be able to put lighter and more vibrant colors than deep-colored Javanese batik. In Singapore, the existence and use of batik has been recorded since the 12th century but has receded in popularity through the years. Nowadays, batik is featured in as the uniform of flight attendants for the official flag carrier airlines of Singapore, Indonesia, and Malaysia. Let's now go to the fabric design of the country Brunei. Brunei's traditional textile is also called batik, but it is uniquely different from Indonesia, Malaysia, and Singapore. Its designs have the following. First, the national flower, which is called simpur. Second, the sumboy-sumboy or their pitcher plant. And lastly, Brunei's traditional design of air mole. Different techniques are used in Brunei's batik like airbrushing, cracking, bubble, rainbow, sprinkle, geometry, and marble. These techniques are applied on fabrics like cotton, chiffon, linen, and brocade. Handmade batik designs are created through the art of layering and mixing of colors injected with creativity. Batik can be done in 4 different ways. The first one is hand-drawn. The second one is using metal blocks. The third one is screen printing. And the last one is digital printing. This is an example of Brunei's batik polo shirt. Let's move on to the second part of this lesson. Let's go to the arts and crafts of the different Southeast Asian countries. Let's have the arts and crafts of Thailand. In Thailand, they have the Thai Sky Lantern Festival. Flying lanterns are made out of rice paper with a bamboo frame, which contain a fuel cell or small candle. When the fuel cell is lit, the flame hits the air inside the lantern, causing the lantern to rise. Once airborne, the sky lantern will rise until the fuel cell or candle stays alight. When the candle burns out, the sky lantern floats back to the ground. In Thailand, flying lanterns are used during the year for festivals, the most popular being the Loy Krathong Festival. This festival is held on the night of the 12th full moon, usually in November, with Chiang Mai believed to have the brightest and most spectacular celebrations. Sky lanterns or wish lanterns, as they are commonly known, have become popular on the main tourist beaches of Phuket. Light your candle, make your wish, and once your wish lantern is floating skyward, sit back and enjoy. Let's now go to the arts and crafts of Cambodia. Handicrafts are part of their traditional culture and their livelihood as they produce textiles, baskets, jars, pottery, and other tools for their daily use. Many indigenous groups have established small enterprises and produce traditional products to generate supplementary income in order to support their livelihood. The handicraft sector provides vital employment opportunities to most indigenous artisans and disadvantaged people, especially women who are struggling for survival. These are some examples of Cambodian handicrafts. Now let's go to the arts and crafts of Laos. They have the paper making. In this country, they make paper by hand in the wider region for over 700 years using the bark of the local sa or mulberry tree. The bark is crushed and soaked in water until it dissolves into a paste. The liquid is then scooped out, poured through a bamboo sieve, and finally placed in a thin layer on the bamboo bed and dried in the sun. Traditionally, sa paper was used for calligraphy and for making festive temple decorations, umbrellas, fans, and kites. In former times, it was also used as a filter in the manufacture of lacquerware. In recent years, the art of sa paper handicraft has been revived, particularly in Luang Prabang, northern Laos, where it is now used to create lampshades, writing paper, greeting cards, and bookmarks. Now let's move on to the arts and crafts of Vietnam. They have the silk painting. Vietnamese silk painting is one of the most popular forms of art in Vietnam, favored for the mystical atmosphere that can be achieved with the medium. During the 19th and 20th centuries, French influence was absorbed into Vietnamese art, and the liberal and modern use of color especially began to differentiate Vietnamese silk paintings from their Chinese or Japanese counterparts. Vietnamese silk paintings typically showcase the countryside, landscapes, pagodas, historical events, or scenes of daily life. Here are some other examples of Vietnamese silk painting. Now let's go to the arts and crafts of Indonesia. They have the wayang kulit. Wayang kulit is a type of puppet shadow play performed around the Indo-Malayan archipelago, tracing its origins to India. It is derived from a Javanese Hindu-Buddhist tradition where handcrafted leather puppets depict epic stories of the gods in shadow play. A traditional gamelan orchestra would accompany the storytelling. Shadow puppetry is famous in Indonesia. Wayang in modern Indonesian language means show or perform. Kulit means skin, a reference to the leather material that the figures are carved out of. Others say that wayang is also attributed to the Indonesian word bayang, which means shadow. The puppets come in all sizes, ranging from 25 centimeters to 75 centimeters. The puppets are usually made out of buffalo and goat hide and mounted on bamboo sticks. The characters are usually represented by several versions in a set. The best puppets are made from young female water buffalo parchment, and the curing can take up to 10 years. The performance of wayang kulit. The puppets are moved behind a cotton or linen screen by a dalang, which is the puppet master in a shadow puppet play. The dalang tells the story, interprets, and voices each character, producing sound effects with speech and movement, and manipulates all the figures between the lamp and the screen to bring the shadows to life. This is an example of a picture of how wayang kulit is performed. Most shadow play is based on two epic stories from India, the Mahabharata and the Ramayana. The Balinese and Javanese have combined the Hindu stories with Buddhist and Muslim ideas mixed with their own folklore. Now let's go to the arts and crafts of Malaysia. They have the wow kite. The wow kite in Malay is a uniquely designed Malaysian kite called wow. Its wings are similar to an Arabic letter which is pronounced as wow. This kite-making tradition comes naturally to Malaysian people, especially in the eastern states of the Malayan Peninsula. Farmers used kites as scarecrows in the fields and as a means to lull their children to sleep, so they could work with little interruption. Now, kite flying has become a popular sport not just in Malaysia but also internationally. Malaysia has been celebrating kite festivals annually like the Pasir Gudang International Kite Festival. These kite festivals encourage more tourists to visit their country. This is an example of a picture of the Pasir Gudang International Kite Festival. Now let's go to the arts and crafts of Brunei. They have songkok. The songkok, also called peci or kopia, is a cap widely worn in Indonesia, Brunei, Malaysia, Singapore, the southern Philippines, and southern Thailand, mostly among Muslim males in formal gatherings such as wedding feasts, funerals, or festive occasions such as the Muslim Eid al-Fitr and Eid al-Adha. The songkok came to be associated with Islam in Malaysia, while in Indonesia, peci is also associated with the nationalist secular movement. This is an example of a songkok. The value of songkok wearing is taught to the young, both at home and at school. An adult may not want to wear the songkok all the time, but he will certainly wear it on various important occasions. Naturally, there are people who habitually wear the songkok most of their waking hours. However, in former times, the act of not wearing it was usually associated with piety. Nowadays, people have the option to wear the songkok to fulfill traditional religious requirements or not at all. Some government servants are given songkoks with the appropriate decorations as part of their uniforms. In Brunei Darussalam, men's headgears are categorized into three: First one is the dastar, which is a piece of cloth tied around the head. The second one is songkok or kopia, a type of cap made from velvet. And the last one is tangkolok or serban, which resembles a turban and is typical headdress in the Middle East. Here are the pictures of the dastar, songkok, and tangkolok. For the last part of this lesson, let's now discover the sculptures of the different Southeast Asian countries. Let's now go to the sculpture of Cambodia, and they have stone carving. For many thousands of years, the art of stone carving has flourished in Cambodia. From small statues to the breathtaking carvings found at Angkor Wat, this art medium has become one of the country's most cherished art forms. Stone carving has been both a passion and a livelihood for many Cambodian sculptors. The art of stone carving in Cambodia has a very long, fascinating history which goes back to the foundation of the Khmer nation. Here's an example of a stone carving from Cambodia. Let's now discuss the sculpture of Thailand. They have the very famous Wat Pho. Thailand is world famous for its sculpture that dates back 4,000 years ago. The most commonly used materials are wood, stone, ivory, clay, and various metals. The most notable sculptures are the Thai bronzes, famous for their originality and grace. Here is a picture inside the Wat Pho. Inside the Wat Pho is the reclining Buddha. This famous sculpture in Wat Pho in Bangkok is 46 meters long and 15 meters in height. It is made of plaster on a brick core and finished in gold leaf. The feet are inlaid with mother of pearl. If Cambodia has stone carvings, Lao artisans use a variety of media in their sculptural creations. Typically, the precious metals such as bronze, silver, and gold are used. Let's now discover the sculpture in Laos. They have what they call Phra Sai. The most famous statue made of gold is the Phra Sai of the 16th century, which the Siamese carried home as loot in the late 18th century. Another famous sculpture in Laos is the Phra Bang, which is also cast in gold. Unfortunately, its craftsmanship is said to be of Sinhalese rather than Lao origin. It is traditionally believed that relics of the Buddha are contained in the image. Now let's go to the sculpture of Vietnam. Vietnamese sculpture has been heavily influenced by the three traditional religions, Taoism, Confucianism, and Buddhism, which come from neighboring countries, China and India. Among the famous sculptures is the 10,000-year-old carvings which can be seen on the Dong Noi cave. The Dongson culture is famous for its kettle drums, small carvings, and home utensils which have handles sculpted in the shape of men, elephants, toads, and tortoises. Another examples of sculpture are mourning houses erected to honor the death of the Jiarai and Bana. Ethnic groups are symbolized by statues placed in front of the graves. These statues include couples embracing, pregnant women, people in mourning, elephants, and birds. Now let's go to the sculpture of Indonesia. Indonesia is known for its stone, bronze, and Iron Age arts. The sculptures can be found in numerous archaeological sites in Sumatra, Java to Sulawesi. The native Indonesian tribes usually create sculptures that depict ancestors, deities, and animals. This is evident in the pre-Hindu Buddhist and pre-Islamic sculptures from the tribes. The most amazing sculptures are the Asmat wooden sculpture of Papua, the Dayak wooden mask, the ancestral wooden statue of Toraja, the totem-like sculpture of Batak and Nias tribe. This is an example of an Asmat wooden sculpture of Papua. This one is the Dayak wooden mask. These are examples of ancestral wooden statue of Toraja. These are the totem-like sculpture of Batak and the Nias tribe. From the classical Hindu-Buddhist era of Indonesia, the most prominent sculptures are the hundreds of meters of relief and hundreds of stone Buddha at the temple of Borobudur in central Java. Now let's go to the sculpture of Malaysia. Most of Malaysia's sculpture are relief. These are partially carved into or out of another surface. These sculptures rely on a base or plane to support them and are a combination of both three-dimensional and two-dimensional art forms. This is very popular along the walls and stone columns of the ancient Greek and Roman buildings and can still be seen today on many famous buildings, including the Colosseum. Relief sculpture is practiced today by artists and architects done with stone, marble, bronze, and many other substances. There are three main types of relief sculptures. The first one is the alto form. This is almost completely carved from its surface, highly shaped, with very little of the structure touching the base or plane could possibly stand alone if the base or plane were removed. These are similar to the Egyptians' alto relief sculptures of gods or pharaohs attached to their temples, common among Greeks and Romans. This is an example of an alto form sculpture. Second is the bas form. It is a relief that barely extends past the base, common as wall decorations on Greek or Roman buildings, and are the type mostly seen on the Colosseum. The last one is the sunken relief sculpture, an image that is carved into the surface rather than out of it. They also have relief wood carvings which frequently adorn the doors, walls, and windows of traditional Malay houses. Popular motifs of such relief carvings are the various kinds of Malaysian flowers and plants. These carvings require a high degree of skill, patience, and determination. The best Malay wood carving is from Terengganu and Kelantan, passed down from one generation to another. The craft is divided into ukiran halus, fine carving, and ukiran kasar, literally meaning rough carving. Senggal is the preferred wood for building houses and boats. Being expensive, other woods such as balaw or pera, which is slightly softer than senggal, might be used for the rafters or floorboards of house or for the prow of a boat. Ukiran halus involves the carving of relief patterns, hilts of keris, short for Malay dagger, bedheads, and cupboard tops. Ukiran kasar, on the other hand, refers to the carvings on larger objects like furniture, pillars, windows, room portions, and eaves of roofs. Now let's go to the sculpture of Singapore. The Sri Mariamman Hindu temple with sculptures of different images is almost as old as Singapore itself. This was constructed and dedicated to the goddess Mariamman, who is worshipped for her power to cure disease. Early Singapore was mostly jungle, so disease was rampant. Its most interesting feature is its impressive gopuram or tower over the main entrance, which is decorated with numerous Hindu deities. In this picture, you can see the Sri Mariamman Hindu temple. The Merlion was conceived because the Singapore Tourism Board or STB felt the country lacked a distinct image representing the nation and its history. They set out to fabricate an icon which could tap into the particular myths and folklore of the area, many of which feature sea beasts and magical fish creatures. The Merlion is also partly inspired by the story of how Singapore got its name, or the Singapura story. The Sentosa Merlion is the biggest replica, standing at 37 meters and made from glass-reinforced concrete. This is the example of the Merlion in Singapore. Now let's go to the sculptures of Brunei. Sculpture in Brunei takes on a more utilitarian role than an aesthetic one. The people of Brunei have a long tradition as excellent craftsmen, using bronze and silver to create adornments and functional items such as bowls, tools, and the like. Sculpting is one art form that is not yet widely practiced in Brunei Darussalam. There are several artists who can make sculptures like any other. Examples of their creations can be seen at the ASEAN squares in the ASEAN member countries. To help preserve this heritage of metalwork, the Brunei Arts and Handicraft Training Center was established in 1975 to revive and promote the nation's dying tradition of crafts including metalwork. In this picture is the example of a metal sculpture at the ASEAN Park in Brunei. Alright, that's the end of our lesson for Mapeh Grade 8 Arts first quarter. I hope you learned a lot about the different arts and crafts of the Southeast Asian countries. See you again on our next lesson. Bye!